have to get it from a pharmacy or their doctor.
If you've gotten your COVID shot, you can now order your morning espresso shot without a mask. Starbucks lifting its mask mandate for fully vaccinated customers, along with Target, Walmart, Trader Joe's, Costco, and Publix. NBC News' Vaughn Hilliard is at a shopping center in Leesburg, Virginia. So, all right, Vaughn, you're there, you're outside Target. What's the biggest concern for shoppers there about the new mask changes? What are they saying?
That's why talking to folks on the ground, it's very evident from their own questions about can you wear a mask or can you not wear a mask? You know, hearing from Cal down in Georgia, you know, there's different jurisdictions have different policies. There's only a handful of states now that actually have statewide mask mandates. California, New Jersey, but just this afternoon, Massachusetts, New York, they lifted their statewide mandates, and there are still some local jurisdictions, counties, including here in Virginia, that do, but we're in a place where that's not the case. So that's why it comes down to the corporate heads at Target to decide whether folks can come if they are fully vaccinated without a mask. And that's exactly what happened earlier today when Target announced that they were joining the likes of Costco and Walmart and other major corporations in lifting their mask requirements for folks who are fully vaccinated. The signs literally came down off the front doors of this very Target here this morning. I want to let you hear from one woman, Liz Ayer, who we met just after she shopped for the first time in a year without a mask on at this Target, as well as some other folks, though, who made their way to Home Depot, where that requirement still stands. Take a listen.
I walked in with my mask because I was hesitant, and walking through the aisle, I saw another young woman without her mask, and I said, "You're not wearing a mask." And she said, "Well, I was vaccinated, and the governor said we don't have to." And I'm like, "You're right." And I said, "We need to start seeing smiley faces." So I took my mask off and continued my shopping a little bit leery.
Are you supportive of businesses requiring masks too?
I mean, it's their business. They can do what they want. If they don't want to enforce the mask mandate, then that's on them.
Are you okay with Home Depot saying, please continue to wear masks?
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I've been fully vaccinated since January, but, you know, it's up to the stores.
Allison, that's why so much of this is literally happening in real time, these conversations happening inside the stores and out here in these American parking lots.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere right now. The conversations, Vaughn, we're all having at home about what to do, when you need your mask, when you don't. What are you hearing from companies like Home Depot? What are they saying about keeping their mask mandates in place for now?
You know, there's been pressure from, you know, one of the top unions in the country that represents more than 1 million retail and grocery workers came back with a scathing letter pushing back against the CDC's guidance, saying that essential workers are on the front lines. And when you're looking at the numbers, more than 60% of Americans are still not fully vaccinated. And so that's where that honor system type question comes into play, because, you know, Costco here behind, I actually was talking to one of the unmasked individuals who I talked to, Melissa, as she made her way out. And I said, introduced myself. I said, do you by chance, have you been vaccinated? And she said, no, it's my personal freedom. So however many folks are entering with masks who are vaccinated, but then there's also that population who are not vaccinated. And still, there's a ways to go in this pandemic, not only here in the country, but also globally, as scientists are trying to push back against these other variants that arise. We are still a long way from herd immunity, and that is why you see the likes of Home Depot continue to hold on to their mask mandate, as well as Kroger's and Walgreens. But you continue to see, like in several states, others, including just actually this afternoon, CVS also lifted their mandate. So it seems like this is an ever-evolving thing with these corporations that we should expect to hear more of over the course of the week, Allison.
Sure. Yeah, sure is, Vaughn. All right, so what happens? You head to a shopping center like the one where you are, and you want to hit a couple of stores at once, and the requirements are different from store to store. What are the companies doing? What are the stores doing to clear up any confusion about their policies so shoppers actually know what they need to do when they walk in the door?
So everybody's got their signs on the door if it's required. At Home Depot, that was the case this morning. Literally talking to several of the gentlemen who had their masks in their hands, and the sign was still up on the door. And that's where you heard from Liz walking up to this Target there. And I'm here with Jason and Paul are my crew. And yes, we went shopping at Target and at Costco. and it was clear that the sign was gone. And we should know the requirement for masks doesn't apply to Target or Costco employees either. The woman who is checking card membership at Costco, the Costco employee, she doesn't have a mask on today, presumably per company standards because she is fully vaccinated. We should note Target still has their signs, social distancing. When you're doing the checkout lines, they're said that they still are focused on increased cleaning. But at the same time, it's becoming clear when you're looking at folks here in the Costco, about 20% of folks were unmasked. And there was one gentleman, you could see it hanging out of his shirt pocket there, ready to be put on. But at the same time here on this Monday, realizing that things are changing and that it's not necessary to put on now anymore. Allison.
So listen, Vaughn, I got to ask you, I mean, look, you guys are both reporters and shoppers today. You're living what everyone else is going through, right? So you're part of the story as well. Was it weird? Like, how did you feel going into a store and not having to wear a mask? We've been masked up so much. We've been out and about. I'm still like a little nervous about it. I'm not sure what to do. Was it weird, or were you just like living your best life mask free?
Okay, no, because I actually did wear my mask inside of both of our entire crew did too, because it's one of those, like, we don't know really, it just feels a little bizarre after this year. And especially, I actually reside in D.C. In D.C.'s policies are different. Mask mandates still exist in the city. And so all this weekend at restaurants, at stores, you still had to wear it. So suddenly you come into a different county, different rules. It's just, from one street to the next, it may be different here. And so I'm figuring it out too with the rest of the population, like you, Allison.
Look, we all are, right, Vaughn? I keep looking at my husband and going, what are we supposed to do? Is this okay? Are we doing the right thing? Like, the last thing I want to do, classic, like, only child who always wants to follow the rules, last thing I want to do is get in trouble, violate the rules, or upset someone. And you just keep looking around wondering what you're supposed to do.
I should note that I went to a baseball game, Allison, this weekend over at Camden Yards. The Orioles playing your Yankees. Your Yankees did win, but everybody outside did not wear a mask in the stadium, which was very different than when I went to a Nationals game just a couple weeks ago and that mask mandate was in order. So baseball games are changing. The fact that the Yankees are still winning is unfortunate, but maybe that will change come summertime, my friend.
Vaughn, that was unkind. I was about to say, if you brought the Yankees some luck, because we haven't been winning nearly as much as I'd hoped this season, if you brought those guys some luck, maybe we need to have you up to New York to go to a game and see if we can get a couple wins. You have to change that attitude first.
It's about time we make it to a game together, my friend. I don't know if the attitude will change, though.
Vaughn, thanks to you and your crew for all of your great reporting. We appreciate you guys.
Breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new topic.
Instead of covering all the big stories, we're going to cover one single subject impacting American politics.
Exploring and explaining the critical issues that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Streaming on NBC News Now.
It's time to check in with NBC News Now correspondent Simone Boyce. She has the latest headlines from NBCnews.com. Hi, Simone.
Hey, Allison, we're going to start with some good news on the vaccine front. Drug makers Sanofi and GlaxoSmithKline say they have promising results for their vaccine's phase 2 trials. It caused strong immune responses in all adult age groups, and they're aiming to get regulatory approval before the end of 2021. But COVID is still rearing its ugly head because the World Economic Forum is canceling its summer meeting in Singapore, citing COVID-19 concerns. The meeting will instead take place in the first half of 2022, but the final location and dates are not confirmed just yet. Well, police and other law enforcement are banned from marching in New York City's Pride Parade until at least 2025. The event's organizers announcing this weekend they'll also try to keep on-duty officers at least a block away. They say they want to increase the presence of community-based security and first responders. And a wildfire in southern New Jersey burning through more than 1,000 acres in less than a day. Firefighters containing about 40% of the fire. Luckily, no buildings have been damaged and no injuries have been reported, but the smoke will likely be visible for days. That's all I got for right now, Allison, but I'll see you in just a bit.
The Supreme Court saying today that it will take up a major Mississippi abortion case. Let's get right to NBC News justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, you call this Mississippi abortion case a very big deal. Tell us about it.
Well, here's why it's a very big deal. The core holding of Roe v. Wade, which the Supreme Court has repeatedly reaffirmed over nearly 5 decades, is that states cannot flat out ban abortion before the fetus is viable. That's considered to be about 23 weeks. States can restrict abortion in that pre-viability period, provided that their restrictions are not an undue burden. So that's the essence of what the Supreme Court has said about states' restrictions on abortion. This Mississippi law is a direct head-on challenge to that because it would ban abortions in the state, virtually all of them, with very few exceptions, after only 15 weeks. And so now the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to relook at that issue, that's why this is such a big deal.
All right, so Pete, they are going to look at this come fall. What else do we know about the scheduling here?
We don't know exactly when it'll be argued. The case will be heard maybe late October, maybe early November, not quite clear. We don't have the calendar that far out in advance. And then it'll be, of course, several more months before the decision comes out. So we may not know the decision in this case for, well, a year or maybe a little more than a year. And by the way, for now, this Mississippi law remains on hold. It was struck down by the lower courts, who said that it was a direct violation of the core holdings of Roe v. Wade and therefore was unconstitutional. So that's the big test here.
All right, a big test indeed coming up in the next, I guess the test will come in the fall and a decision to follow. Pete Williams, thank you so much.
You bet.
The violence in Israel and Gaza showing no signs of slowing down, growing even more deadly as it stretches into week 2. Israel launched a new wave of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip this morning. The Israeli military says it was targeting tunnels that Hamas uses. At least 200 Palestinians have been killed since the fighting started, including 59 children. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
Allison, here in Israel and in the Gaza Strip, at least now there is talk of a ceasefire. Both Israel and Hamas say they are open to discussing it, but we're not seeing any impact of it. In fact, we are expecting another long night of Israeli airstrikes against the Gaza Strip. Israel says it is destroying Hamas's military infrastructure, its tunnel network, the network that Israel says has allowed Hamas to fire thousands of rockets, more than 3,000 now, from the Gaza Strip, over the fences, over the walls, and toward Israeli towns and cities. But Israel has a capability that Hamas does not have, which allows it to continue its campaign with a great deal of confidence. Israel now has a state-of-the-art military defense system. It has been around for years, but it is now nearly perfected. It's called the Iron Dome system, and when the rockets fly toward Israeli towns and cities, the Iron Dome hits about 90%, according to Israeli military officials I've spoken to, of the rockets it targets. And the system is selective. If it sees that a rocket is heading on a trajectory that will take it into an open field or into the sea, the system conserves ammunition, but will knock down nearly all of the incoming rounds, which has kept the death toll in Israel relatively low, and it has allowed this country to continue this operation with little fear of dramatic consequences. Some of the rockets do get through. I was at a house today south of Israel where a rocket fell, and it fell indiscriminately. They are not targeted. They are just point and shoot, and it fell on an apartment building. And there are people in these apartment buildings. So Israel considers this, the world considers that an act of terrorism. You are pointing a weapon that isn't guided with the intention of killing civilians. But in Gaza, they say what they are facing is a full-on military assault. And in Gaza, there are no shelters, there is no missile defense system, and many civilians have been killed, about 200 so far, as Israel continues its campaign to, it says, to stop Hamas from firing the rockets.
Congressional Democrats calling on President Biden to act quickly and help broker a ceasefire between the Israelis and the Palestinians. NBC News national political reporter Sahil Kapoor is here with me now. Sahil, Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff leading a group of 29 senators asking for an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East. Who else is part of that group, and what do they want the president specifically to do here?
It's a broad group, Allison, of Democrats that includes moderates like Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, all the way to progressives like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Now, they call for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians, but there's not a specific demand for the White House on what to do. That would require essentially a stick at the end of the sentence, or else what happens? And this is a question that the White House does not appear prepared to take a firm stance on. President Biden just hours ago said he would be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, and he would have more to say then. It's not clear that that conversation has happened or that the White House has said much about it, but this will be one to follow.
Sahil, if you thought Liz Cheney might fade away this week after losing her leadership role in the House GOP, you were wrong, at least for now. Here she is with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday.
When you talk about him being dangerous and the way he's leading the party, and I asked this about both McCarthy and Elise Stefanik, are they being complicit in what you consider the Trump lies?
They are, and I'm not willing to do that. I think that there are some things that have to be bigger than party, that have to be bigger than partisanship. Our oath to the Constitution is one of those.
Sahil, what is the latest with the Republicans today?
Well, Liz Cheney is clearly not going away. She has made very clear that she intends to stick around and fight for her point of view on this, which is that Republicans should not be tolerant of the former president's falsehoods and lies about the 2020 election being stolen from him. And she has said she will work to make sure he doesn't get anywhere near the Oval Office again, essentially signaling that she would try to stop him from becoming president if he were to run again in 2024, which he has the option to do. So this is an issue where the leadership of the Republican Party has decided that they don't want her within their ranks while she actively debunks and contradicts the former president, but she doesn't really care what they think at this point. She's out of leadership. She has a bigger megaphone now than she did before, and she clearly intends to use it to advance her message.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. Sahil, the House is leaving town at the end of this week. That means the clock is ticking on two big issues, police reform and infrastructure. Where is Congress on both of those bills today? If you could give us updates on each of those issues.
Sure. On police reform, President Biden had called for Congress to pass a bill by May 25th, which will be the first anniversary of the death of George Floyd. It is far from clear that they're going to even reach a deal by then, let alone Zoom legislation to the floor of the House and the Senate to get it passed. There are still some sticking points, like the parameters around qualified immunity in particular. That is still unresolved, but there appear to be good faith negotiations on that question. When it comes to infrastructure, there is a general agreement that that both parties want something like $600 to $800 billion on hard infrastructure, things like roads and bridges, tunnels and that sort of thing. The pay-fors remain a problem, and we're getting closer and closer to an informal Memorial Day deadline by which the White House has said it wants some signs of progress. And if not, the widespread speculation is that it might start cranking up the gears for Democrats to use the budget process and bypass Republicans the way they did on COVID relief. Allison?
All right, the pressure's on. We'll see how things go with everyone in town this week. Sahil, thank you. A major bridge closure in Memphis, Tennessee, a scary reminder of how urgently we need to upgrade our crumbling bridges and roads. The I-40 bridge between Tennessee and Arkansas closed indefinitely after inspectors found a cracked beam. MSNBC host Yasmin Vasugian has more from Memphis.
Yeah, Allison, the bridge behind me completely shut down. The 45,000 plus cars that would normally be driving back and forth across that bridge, 1 in 4 of them trucks with goods on them, having to be redirected miles from here. It's really causing a major impact on these communities financially because of the breakdown and the cracking, I should say literally, of this bridge. I spoke to the mayor of West Memphis, Arkansas, and also the owner of a trucking company talking about those specific impacts. Take a listen.
It's affecting it in a lot of different ways. Mainly, you have a truckload that's coming in, and 2 to 3 hours could be delayed, which goes down the supply chain. And, you know, it's a major issue.
It definitely has hurt us because due to the fact that many of the residents in West Memphis works in Memphis, as well as we have a lot of businesses that depend on the population from surrounding areas, from Memphis and other areas, that comes here to spend money here in the city.
I want to see a bipartisan effort behind infrastructure. Everyone says they're for infrastructure. We've had a particular problem in Memphis with our electrical infrastructure. It's aged and it needs help. So we need to invest in what we have, but local government can't afford it. So we need the help of the federal government.
And so we had some developments from the Arkansas Department of Transportation announcing earlier today that they fired an employee of the Department of Transportation saying, and I quote, failing to carry out responsibilities correctly in the years 2019 and 2020. All bridges that employee had in fact inspected, they would be re-inspected. They would also be referring the case to federal authorities to look into any criminal negligence. So some major developments there. But nonetheless, I think the real question is, will Republicans and Democrats nationwide, but also locally, come together in a bipartisan way to come up with an infrastructure bill that will help pay for fixing bridges like this one behind me? I spoke to Congressman Steve Cohen, and here's what he had to say about that.
I don't think he's going to get the senators from this area, Mississippi, Arkansas, or Tennessee, on those bills no matter what he does. He probably could promise to make us one of the 10, and I don't think it would make a move. We've got to pass the bill. And it'd be nice if we had some support from some of the folks in this area other than myself. But I suspect I'll be the only person from this area that votes to support it.
And so, Allison, he's not optimistic, as you heard there. I spoke to Senator Haggerty yesterday as well. He's saying essentially he wants a standalone infrastructure bill, one that just has highways, roadways, and bridges, and then they can address other things later on down the road. But as you well know, Democrats certainly wanting this more robust infrastructure bill. So it's very much a wait-and-see moment. But in this community suffering because of the shutdown of this major thoroughfare behind me, this bridge, and not really knowing an end in sight, not knowing when, in fact, it could open up. Best case scenario, a couple of weeks. Worst case scenario, a couple months.